Well, thank you for hosting as well. We appreciate it to have a venue to talk to some different people that we don't always see, and we definitely really enjoy coming to the restoration seminar because we are always working with 7th graders and 5th graders and maybe some high school students, but to have college students that are about to embark on their professional careers is really important for us, and you are the people that we hope to inspire to create positive change in our communities. Everybody else counts too, and we do like our gray hairs, but they've been around a while, so it's your turn too. All right, so today what I wanted to talk about was really how do we go about prioritizing restoration, because if you look at the landscape that we have in front of us and the projects that we have to do, there's a lot to do and a little bit of money, and not as much money as we would like, right? So how do we go about that prioritization? How do we make good decisions about what would be the most effective remedies and restorations for our community? And today I intend to have you talk more than me. So I hope you're kind of ready for that. So if you're not one of those people that likes to talk out in a group, just get comfortable. It'll be all right. I promise I won't bite, and there's no wrong answers, okay? So this is our new logo that our new communications coordinator, Kayla, has designed for us, so we really like that. But I'd like to take a minute to thank my staff team, because in our program we say that not one of us has it all together, but all together we have it all. And this talk is certainly part of that, because as we go through these slides, half of them belong to my colleagues. They were the ones that created it, so I need to thank them for their work. All right, so just to reorient us, recall that we have huge mining damages in our area. Over 100 years of mining damaged the land and the waters of the Upper Clark Fork watershed, and our landscape looked like this before we started to do remedy and restoration. We've shown many, many historic photos. If you've been in seminar this year, and then maybe, did you do last semester seminar too? Is it 2 courses or just 1?
Some of them did.
Okay, so you've probably seen in other lectures great photographs of what the Butte landscape has looked like. And so in my growing up, it was always yellow dirt. And I like to tell people that I didn't know that dirt was brown and it smelled good and you planted things in it. I thought it was gritty and yellow and it smelled like Yellowstone Park or sulfur. Okay, so that was my experience of dirt when I was growing up. Now, thankfully, we have covered up a lot of that waste, and we have now these green rolling landscapes that our students, my children, get to play in. And the creek bed and the floodplain of Silverbow Creek is no longer yellow sand, but rather a healthy and functioning riparian area. So recall that we also, in order to be able to do that, to get to that healthy and functioning riparian areas, we had to sue the state of the Atlantic Richfield Company for injuries to our natural resources. So, and I know you've heard from Abby before, so we went in this in depth, so I'm not going to cover all of that, but that's how we got here, is we were able to sue for damages. And then, so how do we prioritize? We've got this little tiny bit of money from the lawsuit. So how do we go about making a priority? What do we look at? What are the things that we consider? Well, recall that remediation, or our waste in place efforts, are really part of the Environmental Protection Agency's purview, or what they do. And so what they tend to look at is how do we protect human health and the environment? And so, for example, this is Buffalo Dump, which is on Main Street as you're making your way up to Walkerville. And the remedy for that was to really decrease the slope, cover the waste rock with topsoil, and plant vegetation. And then this is monitored in perpetuity, so it's monitored forever, as we say. And the remedy here really is about protecting human health, so protecting these people who live right on the top of that waste pile, and then also protecting the environment from stormwater runoff and future storm events. So if you can imagine, again, all in my childhood, this was great sledding. And then all of these nice big gullies that are coming down here, this was spreading those materials throughout the entire watershed, every storm event that we had. So now we are hopefully keeping those in place. We're working on it. It's definitely a work in progress. And recall that the priority of remedy compared to restoration is really, if I drill it down, it's more about people than it is about the ecology or the local ecology. We really are talking about protecting these guys in the future. We don't want them to have lead poisoning. We don't want them to be exposed to arsenic. We don't want them exposed to cadmium. We don't want them exposed to zinc. So how do we make sure that they are protected? So that's some of the decision making there is really about protecting humans from interacting with that. In other Superfund sites, depending on what the contaminant of concern is, it can literally be just building a fence around the Superfund and saying, stay out of here. You don't come in here because it's too unhealthy for you. So I think of nuclear Superfund sites and some of the very damaged sites from chemical waste, that we've buried the waste in place and then we keep people out of there. Our Superfund site is different in that we have to have people living right in the middle of it. We couldn't move the whole city of Butte. And we didn't want to move the whole city of Butte. So how did we make those decisions to protect where they lived in those pocket neighborhoods? So then restoration, recall that with restoration, we want to try to return the environment back to its most natural condition. Now we were having a really good, robust conversation about, can we get back to the condition it was historically before mining damage happened? And really, we cannot. Our climate has changed. Our world has changed. We have a lot more people here now than we did 100 years ago before the damages happened. So what is the best possible ecological solution that's self-sustaining that we can get to? So here's some pictures of one of my favorite projects on Silverboat Creek, which is in Durant Canyon. And so we put the creek in a pipe, which I thought that was amazing engineering. I love that. We removed the tailings, we brought in topsoil, and we built up the structure of the stream banks. And then we start to return it to its historic bed, planted grasses, and eventually trees. There's actually trees now here too. We went back and planted some cottonwoods and some willow plugs. In fact, CFWEP's got the tech bus stuck out there when we were bringing some students out there, and it was really muddy and it was fun, huh, Chris? So anyway, 16 years on Silverboat Creek restoration, $140 million later, we do have a functioning stream system there. And we, last summer again, caught West Slope cutthroat trout with our students on our fly fishing camp. And so, but the goal here wasn't just human health, it's protecting the environment, and it's also restoring back to that baseline condition, and attempt to also give us back the last resources that we have for both recreation and water use. And so protecting the fishery and thinking about the fish is equally as important as it is to make sure that the water is healthy enough for human beings to drink. As you know, aquatic life standard is much higher standard than human health standard for water. So it's a higher level of cleanup. All right, so what are some of the factors to consider in a prioritization plan? This is where I want to hear from you. What do you think we should consider when we're looking at priorities, when we have to clean up? We have triage to do. The whole landscape is destroyed. We have people that are being exposed to contaminants of concern. We have no fish in the creek. We have no animals living in the riparian area. How do we make decisions about priority? This is the scary part. How do you do it? You are in charge of cleaning up Butte. This group of people in this room right now has to clean up Butte, and you've just got the lawsuit dollars, and EPA has said yes, it's a Superfund site. How do you do it? What do you think about first?
Immediate threats to human health and the environment.
Yeah, immediate threats, right? So what would some immediate threats be, David?
Lead in residential soils.
Yeah, lead in residential soils for sure, right? We did that, didn't we? That's doing. We're in the process with that.
Self-sustaining. It should be long-term. If they're doing it, we should not do it again or redo it.
Yes. That would be ideal, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So self-sustaining systems should be a priority. We're learning about that too. We didn't install necessarily very self-sustaining systems in some of our remedies. So take, for example, the Butte Mine Flooding Operable Unit. We allowed the waters to continue to fill into the Berkeley pit. We will have to pump and treat forever. So is that a self-sustaining system? You know, 7 generations from now, will British Petroleum ARCO be around to help pay for that? What will our 7 generations forward have to do in order to take care of that particular remedy, right? So thinking about self-sustaining should be a priority, in my opinion. What else?
Return its form and function back to the stream.
Yeah, try to make it back to its former function if we can, right? Like I said, in the built environment of the Butte Hill, we can't make it back to being Rampart Mountain. Rampart Mountain's gone, but we couldn't build it again, right? But we can do our very best to make sure that the ecology there is representative of what the ecology might have been. So should it have trees included, native grasses, native plants? What should it be like? Okay, thank you. What else? Go ahead.
I'm not in the classes.
Oh yeah, you're fine. We can hear from anybody.
I think when you're talking about limited money, it would be ideal if a solution can address multiple problems. So like a solution that brings back recreational and also addresses stormwater problems. And I know that's like crazy because that requires people from different fields and different agencies and departments to work together. But I think with limited money, and we saw that happen a lot with this cleanup, that to try to get the bang of the buck, right? Mm-hmm. Solve more than one problem and look forward to what a future problem is going to be. And yeah, to try to solve more than one problem with the same solution.
Oh, I totally agree. Thank you,
right?
Dr. A. So, and we do that. If you read in some of the prioritization plans that are put out by the Natural Resource Damage Program, you'll see that when they talk about what is a high priority, if it can address more than one issue, that action comes to the higher priority. It gets ranked as 1 instead of 2 or 3. For example, as we're looking at the tributaries that are feeding the Clark Fork River and Silverbow Creek, in the prioritization for recolonization of fish, we're looking at, okay, if we do a little bit of work on this trib, how will that help recolonize the creekways? Will it help recolonize the creekways? Will it open up fish passage? And then if the answer is no, it's not going to help us do that other goal of recolonization, but it would help with water quality, maybe it goes to a slot of 2 instead of 1. All right, so let's see what we came up with. Well, one of the things we do have to consider is laws. We have to work under the purview of the EPA's regulations and the laws too. So what are we meeting the minimum standards? And you know, the state of Montana and the Department of Environmental Quality have standards for us to follow too. So we have to meet those. We were looking at that human and ecosystem health. Of course, our dollars available. Achievable results are the best value. So that's the decision making that happened with the Berkeley pit. So if we look at filling and allowing it to fill, it was protective of human health and the environment because that water isn't going anywhere. It's filling into the bathtub of the pit. But the dollars that would have been involved at the time in the 1983 decision making process were extreme. And they were beyond measure, and ARCO was going away and was totally bankrupt. So we would be standing there holding the responsibility of treating and pumping still at 1983 time. And I'm going to blow it on the amount, but it was in the millions of dollars per year that it would cost to keep those pumps running. So now fast forward 30 years, you know, let's just use a nice round number of 2 million, we'd have been $60 million in as, you know, we looked at that. So those are some of the things we think about too. Not something that makes my belly happy though. I gotta say, I don't know what other people feel like, but I don't like that. I don't like thinking about the dollars that I have to pay for something. So I'm wanting to achieve and look for something better and bigger, and is there innovations that I can use? Within the NRD prioritization plan, we look back to the original restoration plan that we created, that the local boards that are informed citizens that are helping to create, so the Upper Clark Fork Advisory Board and the Butte Natural Resource Council. Those councils were entrusted by us and by the governor to come up with the restoration plan. So after they evaluated all the things that needed to be done, then they filter through, does this project align with the restoration plan goals of returning back baseline condition, of helping us to recover lost resources and injured resources, and does it offer us recreational opportunities as well? Dr. Powell said long-term monitoring and maintenance. I think that absolutely has to be a part of our prioritization. We want to be able to walk away from something and let it go and trust that it's going to be okay. Now we get a contract every summer to evaluate our reclamation sites, and that's great for us for now, but I'd like to be able to walk away from those sites in the future. And then I think something we need to think about is aesthetics. Because as we walk through our community, and as we walk through any Superfund community, not just Buttes, but we walk through any Superfund community, think of what it feels like to live in a community that has a damaged waste site right in the middle of it, with a fence around it that says, don't come in here. This is too bad for you to live here. Are you gonna move your family there? Probably not, right? So we really need to think about how it is in the landscape. Some of our friends that we work with on restoration say, plant the flowers that come up really fast and are super showy so that the people can see that something awesome is happening here. And those plants died back really, really fast. I don't know if you guys have had Rich Prodgers as a speaker, but Rich loves that. He loves to plant the things that are pretty and showy right off the bat so that the people think it's working. And you know what? Psychologically, it is. Because I always go, oh gosh, it looks so good out here. And then I know that the turnover for the more native grasses that aren't as pretty are coming in later. All right. So there's some of the projects that we've done in Butte, and we've gotten they've been run through that prioritization plan too. So if you think about Butte water, we had to have a water system that was healthy for us to drink, and we needed to do a lot of changing over of things. We finally got our wastewater treatment plant up to snuff too, which is wonderful because we were affecting Silverbow Creek's restoration because our water treatment plant was so bad. We have some things that are pending coming out. Here's some more. So I'm not going to go through all of them. But I get very, very frustrated as a person that spent the last 10 years of my life talking about these things when I go to a public meeting and somebody says, nothing has happened, nothing's been done. And I just want to cry because I'm like, do you know every green space you see in Butte right now is part of remedy or restoration? Like, so much has been done.
Back up one slide.
Sure.
So, what's the total?
Oh gosh, yeah, we should probably. Who's good at math really fast?
Oh, C?
Sorry.
17, 18, 16, 16, 20, roughly 25 million, 30, and these are down there too?
So that doesn't have basin water treatment plant in, okay.
No.
I think it corresponds with the number that came from the settlement. Because remember, we're trying to, a lot of things are appropriated already.
Yeah.
So I think it corresponded with that total number.
Okay. So it's probably higher than that.
Yeah.
It's definitely higher than that.
Definitely, and then we have these as well. So then we're adding all these onto it as well. And I didn't have these numbers. All right, so anyway, lots of money, lots of priorities. And if we look at what is going on in each of these projects that aren't necessarily just about water, this is really a lot about replacement of lost resources for recreation, but it has the dual effect of helping us with something else. Like the Browns Gulch and German Gulch projects are really about fish passage and making sure that the cutthroat species are able to make it back into Silverbow Creek to recolonize Silverbow Creek and eventually the Clark Fork main stem. When we look at our native plant project, that's a lot about stormwater and controlling for stormwater and kicking CFWEP out of the monitoring business so that eventually things are just going to be self-sustaining, okay? Because right now we have non-natives that are up there and it's a wreck. And well, yeah. All right. So what else needs to be done? There's a lot of things that still need to be done, and right now the Fisheries Restoration Plan is currently out for public comment, and your comments are due today. So if you want to go make comment to the NRD, you should get on that website and do that today. And I like that document. So for students, this document, the Fisheries Restoration Plan, is a really easily digestible restoration plan document to look at, and they have a beautiful matrix in there of how they made their priorities decision making. So if you're interested in that and that's part of your learning for becoming a restoration ecologist, I highly recommend this plan. It's very well done. And so we're really looking at the tribs of Silverbow Creek and the Clark Fork River, including in Butte, we're looking at Basin Creek and Blacktail Creek in regards to how those two streams feed Silverbow Creek's waters. And really, if we're really honest, The water that is Silverbow Creek's water is Blacktail Creek's water. And then we have some stormwater from the Butte Hill that feeds Silverbow Creek. So is it a priority to make sure Blacktail is in the best shape possible? Absolutely. You know that the Parrot Smelter site, the Diggings East and North Side tailings are part of the current consent decree negotiations that are ongoing right now that the community has really been talking about, that people are engaged in and wondering about. And there's been a lot of rhetoric about whether we should remove them or leave them in place, or what we should do with the area of the ground that's going to be now cleaned up if we decide to get a cleanup, if we get a cleanup. Stormwater is addressed in some of the plans, but it's still probably, Joe, would you say it's probably one of the worst issues that we're still dealing with?
It's the worst problem for Silverbow Creek.
Mm-hmm. So stormwater is always a problem for every municipality. You know, non-point source pollution is rough for every municipality, but in ours it's particularly difficult because of the added burden from metals. And so we have to be looking at it both ways. Like, what can the ratepayers do? What can we as citizens do? And then what should remedy and restoration help take care of? And so how do we balance and prioritize what we want restoration and remedy to pay for compared to what ratepayers would? And then, of course, we haven't even talked about our West Side Soils Operable Unit yet, but that will affect Silverbow Creek. There's lots of piles of waste that are just hanging out there. And then our Warm Springs Ponds Operable Unit in the Clark Fork section is another big hairy monster that's hanging out there that we have to clean up. We're going to have to figure out what to do with all those sediments that are trapped there.
Are those official designations now, the operable units, or?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes, there's just no consent decree or anything on West Side. And Warm Springs is sort of the rhinoceros in the room, is that how? I can't remember how he puts it, but
Warm
yes.
Springs Ponds has a interim record of decision, and they didn't want to do anything with the ponds until they've managed the metals that are coming down Silverbow Creek, including, you know, stormwater from
Yeah.
Butte.
And that makes sense, doesn't it? So for students, are you familiar where Warm Springs is in the landscape? Okay, so Warm Springs Ponds really was designed to trap sediments coming from Butte. That was its purpose, is to get those metals out and keep them out of the Clark Fork. So it makes sense to leave that operable unit or that area there until we're done up here. It's foolish to take it out before then. So again, it's a decision on the priority list, right? Like, well, we'll get to that one when we're done up here. And right now it's relatively functioning ecology out there. You have great bird sanctuary out there. You have fisheries. I mean, I want to eat them, but you can fish. So, you know, really, and again, that priority, if you're thinking about this is triage. Warm Springs has a broken leg in the emergency room. Maybe these have broken legs and open gaping bleeding wounds or something, you know, so bad analogy. All right, so we have a lot that still needs to be done. The Parrot Complex, this has been so covered in the news lately, and we have a group of people that are really adamant about getting those parrot tailings out and getting Northside and Diggings East out right now. And there's a huge amount of waste there, and it's been left in place, okay? It's still there. And so underneath the parrot plume, we have some of the most highly contaminated water in Butte. So really, should we leave it there? Again, thinking 7 generations from now, what is that going to be like for those people that are maybe want to build something different there, or have, we now have connectivity with Silverbow Creek, or we have a functioning Silverbow Creek in that section of the stream. So what do we want to do there? This is the Diggings East and North Side tailings. I just wanted you to have a map of that area. This is a legend, or a map showing the new drilling and new sampling locations. So we needed better data in that area, essentially, because a lot of the rhetoric and the discussion has been about, well, do we need to get it out? Is it really contaminated? We'll have connectivity. So we needed better data. So that's what we're doing there. So this question, which I think is a profound one, I'd like us to sit here and think about it for a minute. If this channel, this section of the channel, which starts at Texas Avenue and then makes it down to a confluence with Blacktail Creek, that is the area that people are talking about when they say restore our creek. They want there to be a free-flowing creek from Texas Avenue to here. And so, can it be restored? In our prioritization plan, should it be restored? Is it the right way to spend our money? And I don't have an opinion. I want us to discuss it as a group of people here that are, you know, learning this concept maybe for 5 minutes. I just want us to think about what we'd think about. And so here's your turn, all right? I want you to discuss what issues are probably not being considered on the Silverbow Creek restoration plan, or if we should put that back there. How do we gain public trust and public involvement? You have this really active group right now, and I'm excited for them. I love the fact that they're engaged because it's important to be engaged. So how do we, as representatives, people doing the restoration plan, how do we gain public trust and public involvement? What methods should we use for the prioritization? Should we have well, we're just going to sit in a room and talk about it, and whoever comes up with the best idea is the one that wins? Or should we follow a logic model? What do you think? Well, I kind of said what I think there, didn't I? And then, if you were in charge, what would you do? So, are you ready? Look at them, they're so active. I don't know. Everybody can join in, too. I don't want to just say just students can do this. So everybody can join in. So what do you think? What's not being considered if we think about putting water back in at Texas and running it down to the Blacktail confluence, restoring that area?
Coming from the pit after it's been treated.
Is it?
Would that be the idea?
It's one of the ideas on the table, sure. Yeah. One of the ideas on the table is that, to discharge water up there instead of further down. Another idea is to use water from the reservoir at Storm Lake and pipe it, because we currently do have a pipe system, to bring it into Butte and allow it to discharge there. What else?
I think we have to recognize that it's a compromise no matter what, because that creek at one point was connected to Yankee Doodle and the whole watershed up there. So no matter what, it's a compromise. And if we're going to compromise at Texas Avenue or downstream, that has to be where we start the conversation.
You bet, because it'll never be restored to its original condition, right? Like, we can't connect it to the little remnant of Silverbow Creek above the mine, right? I like that point too. Oops, what else?
How well do we understand the groundwater scheme around there? And also, it's just going to flow into the Sled Canyon from there, so what do we do about that?
Yeah, good point, good point. Because we do have a problem in the Sled Canyon wall area, don't we? We have tailings underneath the slag there that probably can recontaminate. So if we're cleaning this one section and to be later contaminated in the next section, is that a good priority? Is it a good use? Yeah.
Can it, and this is totally your idea, Rayelynn, but can it be made more into a closed system that water is coming out, but then it just goes back in, so it's more for aesthetic, but not making it really a fish creek, you know? Mm-hmm. That it's just, because the other problem is you still have to deal with stormwater with that, and right now it's what's catching stormwater. So if you restore it to a functioning creek, you're not going to want stormwater in there, especially not our stormwater.
Right.
But what if it was a closed system, which I'm thinking about because of the golf course in Anaconda, how that's a closed system. Mm-hmm. So it gives the visual of beauty and use, but is not really functioning ecologically.
Okay, yeah?
Can we make this a priority while we don't have a feasible way to treat the water from the pit if it hits the critical zone or critical level?
Right? Are we cart before the horse? Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, devote energy and resources to this when we have a bigger problem looming?
Okay, good question. Good question. What else? Anybody want to take stabs at answering some of the questions that are coming out? I'm not answering any of them. It's all up to you. Like I might add some dialogue, but.
Yeah, well, we're not sure that there are good answers to those.
Right.
Before we actually handle these situations, then we could really make actually an argument or kind of a discussion about, is it real? Can it really be real before we have water to that creek? Mm-hmm. Or we solve all these issues that were mentioned. So I think it's a good topic for discussions, but it has a lot of downs and outs.
Mhm.
Just
But at the same time, it's been one of the things to gain a lot of traction,
yes.
right? Both with decision makers and in the press. So, yeah, where do you go with that?
Exactly, and
So
that's
it's moving
important
ahead,
too.
right?
So,
So that brings me to that public trust piece, because my experience of Superfund and Butte, I'm just going to speak from my experience as a citizen, as a student growing up here as a high school kid who couldn't wait to get out because it was so bad here. It's my high school graduate opinion. We always thought that nobody was listening, and we were pretty sure that decisions were being made without us. So I think that's some of what you guys are seeing right now is, the vernacular of closed-door meetings or secret meetings is that old feeling that we have, that we can't trust the decision makers that are doing the work on our behalf. So now we have this active, engaged citizenry, and we have some changeover in thoughts about who, how to do this work, and it seems like people are listening. So how do we marry public trust and ensure that we're kind of in a way giving citizens what they want, but how do we give them what they want with the priorities of what's going on? How do we come up with the best marriageable solution here? Is it a closed system? Do we have good data to understand how it's going to function with the groundwater going forward? And then I think about 7 generations from now, I know this globe is going to be different than it is now. And our climate is getting ever hotter and ever drier. So is it a responsible choice to take water from a reservoir that is pretty good, high-functioning quality water, pipe it to Butte, set it in a channel, and let it run down and possibly get contaminated, and then go to the next community? Or should we hold that water for our community? The Berkeley pit, is a logical solution of we can discharge out of there, but will it always be treated? What if we start pumping it out of there, we allow it to flow out of there, and then the treatment facility goes down, or the people that are responsible for paying for it evaporate, and then the ratepayers have to pay for it? So how do we make a method for making a matrix or a prioritization, a logic model to follow? What do you think would need to be in the logic model? Tom, what needs to be in the logic model?
There's a lot. I just keep going back to the overall project. And this one, are you specifically asking just for the flowing creek scenario?
Yeah, or if there's another one that you have that's your favorite you would want to talk about a logic model for. Yeah, either's fine.
What do you think about it?
Okay. What do you think, Joe? I'm picking on people that have experience to help us here.
It's kind of unfair because we kind of know some of the answers anyway.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
Well, as you put me on the spot before, stormwater is still the biggest problem. So that the highest priority is dealing with that. And right now, the channel, you said, the channel only receives stormwater. As a matter of fact, in the past, Butte Silver Bow had they rebuilt the channel, new clean channel. Silver Bow started putting Silver Lake water in that channel, and what we quickly found out was it was clean to start with and dirty by the time it got to the creek, because the channel was quickly recontaminated by stormwater. So the highest priority is taking stormwater and getting it a lot cleaner before it gets to the creek. And some of the space in that corridor needs to be used for that. So it needs to be separated from that channel. There's plenty of space down there to still put a channel through there. And of course, the idea is, did you say that, David? Berkeley pit water? No, somebody mentioned
Jaded, yeah.
Berkeley pit water, once it's cleaned, is the obvious source of water, and a way better source than robbing the Warm Springs Creek drainage to put it in a channel over here. So.
Right. Okay. Then I think about also, you know, every time we start moving dirt, it's going to be expensive, right? And so how do we get it out of there? Where do we put it? Those are parts that go into this logic model. And getting it out, we need to, right?
In relation to that, you need to consider, are your issues contained or are they mobile?
Yeah.
And because it's going to be cheaper to remove it now, or are you going to contaminate the local native soil and have to remove more and more as you defer your treatment?
Spot on, because that's where a lot of the study is happening now. That's why we are drilling all these new wells, because we really need to know how it's moving, how fast it's moving, where it's moving to. We made some pretty big assumptions, I think, early on. So you're right, because will it be a future issue? Will it be something, again, 7 generations from now, our great, how many great grandkids are going, oh man, I wish they wouldn't have let that happen. I wish they wouldn't have left those there. We tend to think, and the point of this conversation a little bit is we tend to think in immediate reward, right? We tend to think in 4-year cycles sometimes, like, you know, the next election cycle. And we have to not do that in restoration, because restoration doesn't happen in 4 years. It takes a long time. And so we need to think about how we're setting ourselves up for the future, and especially when we're creating a logic model of how to help inform our citizenry, engage our citizenry, and make good decisions with the money we've been entrusted with. What is the model that we're using? Is it the immediate reward model, or is it a long-term reward model? And having good data to inform those models are really important too. So if you were in charge right now, off the top of your head, what would you do?
If you talk about the creek, you're going to have to comply with the laws of the state of Montana. Superfund County can't do that. And what I'm talking about is you have to have a variance for the water coming out of here. If you were doing everything that you could, you would have clean water coming out of here. And you can't have it meet the state standard. And especially as Joe talks about, especially in stormwater events, a lot of the things were put in creek, and they've been lasted 120 years, and they were put in so well they could last another 120, but they were put in bedding of tailings, and so the water runs through them as it dries up, and the copper comes up into the thing, and the next water flows down. So you've got to have some way to handle that. So at first you're going to have to comply with the state of Montana.
Yep.
And in doing that, you're going to have a variance, because as you so well put it, the people down river shouldn't have to deal with the contaminated water from here. But you have to get it cleaned up as much as possible. And if you take the water from Anaconda, you may harm yourself, because it isn't hard water. And that changes the discharge. So all those issues come into play. Is the water at one time can be very good, and most of the time it meets standard, but then you have a runoff, like let's say winter warms up next week, and winter can be the worst time. When you have a big snow melt, it runs off, now you've got real high discharge. So you need a variance for those things.
Yeah. And so thinking about how can we get out of the variance culture too, into we're able to meet it. So what are there solutions that we can do that? And I think that, you know, as we're thinking about those priorities, definitely meeting water quality standard has to be a priority. And if stormwater is the biggest problem with meeting water quality standard, then what are we going to do about that? And using this space that we have available to us to install, you know, connected wetlands, and they can be beautiful and connected with little stream channels and not be gated retention basins that are concrete lined and are super steep and you can't go play in. I mean, we can make things beautiful. It doesn't have to be a you know, an industrial age retention pond. Can we do that and meet the needs of both the recreational aspect, the aesthetic aspect, save ourselves some money, and then increase our ability to meet the water quality standards? And those would be goals that I would set out for the project. Now, a free-flowing creek is a beautiful idea. I just don't know if it's practical given the constraints that we have and the responsibility we have for the next 7 generations' water. You know, we have a lot of time to think about in a global climate that's changing. So maintaining water and restoring it and keeping it here is probably a good idea, in my opinion. I mean, I'm just speaking in my own personal opinion at this point. Yeah.
And the processes you've been involved in are climate models and the ranges of them and water availability part of the planning process?
Well, you know, thank you for that question, because when I'm looking through the documents, I sometimes see a little sentence or two about climate resiliency. We do have a project that's in the Blacktail right now in beaver mimicry to try to increase climate resiliency and storage of water high in the mountains, but I haven't seen it as a focus. And it makes me think, well, are we missing a piece of our thought process here? Because, and maybe it's in there and I'm not seeing it in detail. But I think thinking about where the water is going to come from and how we're going to store it in the future and how we can use it is going to be really important to our watershed. And I know in-stream flow and having a minimum in-stream flow measures are part of the restoration prioritization plan for the fishery, but that does connect back to climate change, because if we don't have a minimum stream flow, why not? Well, probably because we're too dry. So how do we make sure that we're having that minimum stream flow to protect the ecology that's, you know, further downstream from us too? And then we have water users that are further downstream. We have agricultural use and industrial use as well. So how do we manage all of those needs? But I don't see it clearly. So other people that are more, you know, steeped in the restoration plans might be able to speak to that better than I. But in my readings, it's not that. I always think about this too. This is me hanging out with 7th graders all the time because they're so exuberant and so happy, and they're pretty sure they can do anything. So I love them. They'll say, well, you know, you said there's 54 billion gallons of water in the Berkeley pit, right? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, so we can treat it, right? And I'm like, yeah. So it's like a big reservoir of water, right? I'm like, yeah, I guess that's a way of looking at it, it is a bunch of water. So is there a plan that we can create that is our water? You know, does that water belong to the citizens of the state of Montana? Or does it belong to Atlantic Richfield, BP, and Montana Resources? What?
It actually belongs to the state of Montana.
Yeah, so.
Actually, the water belongs to the state of Montana. The pollution belongs to that's the truth.
Is the water right established then?
There's not a water. All water and both surface and groundwater belong to the state of Montana. All the water. You have a permit or a right to use those waters. The rights go back a long way. The permit is what you can get from the state government.
Okay.
All water belongs to the state of Montana. An Anaconda company, and since Marco bought this place, they contaminated the water, so they have the obligation to clean it up.
So Anaconda did have a lot of water rights.
They had water rights to use the water.
So will there be, the question then, Jim, is who will be able to file for a water right on?
Well, actually, I believe Washington have water rights and Atlantic Richfield has water rights. But once it reaches a critical water level, it has to be cleaned up. And I think that's part of the discussion. And as these students go out into the world, that's whatever projects they're working on, they have to be aware of those projects, whether it's oil or mining or any other thing. They have to be aware of that. But the water rights actually belong to Montana.
Okay.
The water, Montana owns the water. You have a right to use it for beneficial use, and you can get a permit to use it for beneficial use. Those are spelled out, whether it's agriculture, whether it's irrigation, whether it's domestic use, and one of the biggest, hottest issues in the state of Montana for the past 10 years, and will currently be, in my opinion, for the next 20 years, is exempt wells. So when you get a piece of property, you have a right to drill an exempt well. There's specific amounts of water. But as the population has grown, especially like in Helena and other places, or Bozeman, or the Flathead Valley, those exempt wells are exempt. So they're allowed to participate, and they're currently trying to figure out, they're using a great part of the resource and they're exempt. So how do you get your hands around it?
Right.
I should throw into the conversation that, and Abby's gonna slap that the EPA has written off the groundwater that is now flooding 10,000 miles of underground workings in the Berkeley pit. And they wrote it off for good reason. It's not fixable. So, like it or not, we're going to have to depend on Atlantic Richfield providing long-term funding for treating that water, because that's what we have, and that's sort of that is a reality. So.
Right, because I think what you're saying, Joe, is that the water doesn't care what we've decided in the consent decree. It's going to keep moving in, and it's going to keep picking up minerals, and it's going to continue to be a source of contamination. And I think where we go with our students is we talk about economic, political, and social will. And so we have to economize things that we need cleaned up in some way. So we tend to think that, gosh, if we're doing good work, we shouldn't have to worry about making money. And I'm here to tell you, I don't think that's right. I think that people can do good work and make money, because when you economize something, you give us a reason to do it beyond it's just for the good of the order. So it's also now good for my family, it's good for my paycheck, it's good for my future family, and it's good for our local economy. So what if there's a solution for treating the water at the Berkeley pit and using it, as our water rights would allow us to, in some way that creates economy? You know, could we do that? Could we use it for energy production?
That's I think, what some of these students should be working on.
Yeah.
Because now as we approach the time that we're going to have to treat the water, there's going to be a cost for that.
Yep.
And you can figure it out per 100 gallons, you're going to have to dump X amount of lime in it, and what the cost is going to be to get it here. So there's going to be a cost for that.
Yep.
If you could, there's so many minerals, especially zinc in that water, so if you can treat the water and take the minerals out for value, even if it costs you a little more, I think the company, especially in Atlantic Richfield, in perpetuity, when they're going to have to do that, if you can do that just to a break-even point and get better water than just dumping lime in and settling everything out and dumping it in the pit. I think that's an opportunity, and I think there's some student here somewhere else that could actually figure out how to do that.
I agree. I think it's about changing our mindset. We don't have to live with what is so. We can be the big so what. We can change the mindset. We can change the solutions for the better. And if we are thinking about it, that these solutions or these problems are going to be here, regardless of consent decrees or people, or the decisions that were made of the past, they're going to be here. What can we do to make that a difference? I think that's a change of mindset. I know we only have 5 minutes, so I want to make sure that we've covered everything that we wanted to talk about. Let's see, So the last part that I want you to be left with is to get involved, to bring your knowledge, your expertise, your passion to working with other people. Help them learn about this, help them know about it. This is some of the kids on our Clean Up Blacktail Stream Day, and they're celebrating the fact that we pulled out 50 bags of garbage on Blacktail Creek. These are some of our scientists who are doing osprey monitoring for blood mercury levels in osprey. We were actually able to, through this study, find out that Flint Creek is really in need of some serious help because it's got a mercury issue up there, and it was because of this study and some of the college students that were involved in that enabled us to prioritize Flint Creek in the plan. There's our good old Chris Doyle out planting some cottonwood trees with students, and you can get your hands dirty. You guys with the restoration ecology class, I know, go out and do a lot of that work. These are students that they're monitoring a fish passage on Warm Springs Creek, and they're looking at culverts, and they're actually standing on a bridge right there looking at how that bridge is impacting the stream at that area. And then, of course, we have some art projects all the time, and we do some pretty passive things. This is a stormwater drain marking event with our Butte Central students. With Butte Central, we've actually marked 150 drains in Uptown Butte, and then we have another student that is working with the BNRC grant that she's been out doing some other drains in that area too they're prettier and showier. These ones are very industrial. They're going to last through winters and things like that. But we do have some art projects that are coming up too, that if you are interested in bringing awareness to stormwater, you can get in touch with Kayla and provide some artwork for wrapping the signal boxes around town. We'll probably launch one of these again, maybe this folk festival if I can get my staff team to comply. So they're like, no, we're not doing it. But so anyway, that's just get involved too and spread the word. I think education is the way forward. And I really, really appreciate that all of you are involved in these projects and that you're here today and you're thinking about the future of our globe. I know you're not all going to stay in Butte, so I appreciate you, and I thank you for your work. Any other questions for me?
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.